Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Chisom and I'm here to talk about my experience being a software engineer, specifically on some of the best tips and tricks that are used by the best engineers that I have met in my years of experience. I say all this because there are so many things about engineering that we are not told or taught in school. And I wanted to share my experience with some of the things that the best engineers do, and maybe this could be useful for someone else. To give some context, I have around 5 years of software engineer experience. And during that time, I've been fortunate to work with some amazing and exceptional people. During my time as a software engineer, I have met engineers that are not just technically skilled, but also deeply kind. And that's the best kind of engineer, an engineer that is very highly technical, but is very humble and willing to collaborate and learn from others. From my experience, these are some of the things that I've learned from the best engineers. The best engineers I've met do not leave things up to magic. If something is confusing or tricky or they don't fully understand, they investigate that thing. It's very easy when something doesn't work to not touch it so it doesn't break. We've all been there before when we don't know why something works and we're not willing to investigate. I realize that the best engineers are willing to go deep until it makes sense. And until it makes sense, they do not stop trying to understand why this thing is working. Also, a lot of the best engineers I know have built this muscle or reflex for tackling difficult problems. When you see a firefighter, you realize that this person has trained themselves against their basic survival instinct to go into a burning building. I was an ops engineer, so whenever the site was down or there was an incident, we were responsible for fixing the problem. So you have to have a certain type of personality to be able to handle such an intense situation. Because for some sites, when they are down for a second, that's millions of dollars being lost in advertising revenue or other forms of revenue. So you have to be a person who understands not only the higher level and technical details, but also has the ability to handle a high pressure situation. And that's what it takes to really be an ops engineer. Some of the best engineers I know are very calm when things like this happen because they know their primary objective is to bring the site up as quickly as possible. They also realize that sometimes things are broken, not because it's anyone's fault particularly or because those things are not important, but they recognize that sometimes things are the way they are because no one has taken out the time to figure out how to fix them. And because they are armed with that knowledge, they feel comfortable tackling broken situations or times where things are falling apart. Another thing that I have learned from some of the best engineers I know is that they are very, very, very good communicators. Some of the best engineers I know, I've only met them remotely. And although they were never physically in the office, you always felt their presence. They had the ability to always make themselves present in the room, and not in a way that pushed other people aside, but actually inspired other people to make themselves present. And it's very difficult communicating digitally because you do not have tone. A majority of actual communication is not done verbally, it's non-verbal. So how would a great engineer be able to communicate when you only have Slack messages? They pick their words wisely and they make sure to focus on the objective, which is making beautiful products and inspiring other people to make beautiful products. So the best engineers I know do their utmost best to communicate well, and they understand how difficult it can be to do so in a digital setting. So they teach themselves over time how to make sure that they're not just felt physically, even when they're not there, but also that their objectives are made clear to the rest of the team. Another thing I've learned from the really great engineers that I've been fortunate enough to work with is that they do not push a culture of blame. It is very easy when things are broken or things do not work the way they want them to pick sides. This is the most basic human instinct, to make sure that you do not take account for something you did not break. But I remember the first time I brought down the site, which was not a very good experience. And I remember my manager, who is a phenomenal manager. He was one of the best managers I've ever had in my career. And he really said something. He said, we would not be breaking things if we were not moving fast enough. And this is not to say you should bring down the site. You should try to avoid doing so. But in that situation, the primary objective was to figure out what caused it and prevent it from happening again, instead of someone taking the blame for that situation. And I think in the Bay Area, and especially in high pressure tech jobs, it is very easy to fall into that trap instead of building infrastructure to prevent things from happening again. lastly, I think because of Steve Jobs and the Bay Area ethos around him, there's this idea that the best engineers are very disagreeable and they just hack away in the corner somewhere and they just emerge with some built project. But as your stack becomes more complicated and more convoluted, nobody truly ever understands all aspects of the stack. In my experience, the best engineers are actually those who are very good at building consensus. They're not those who want their opinions to overshadow others. They're able to make their opinions heard in such a way that builds the team up. Because the reality is, tech is still just tech. Like nobody, unless you're working at the precipice of tech or at the extreme outliers, none of us is doing anything particularly special. Like I know a lot of people in tech want to make it seem like they are building the next Apple computers, but a lot of you are just working on internal tools and nobody wants to be honest about it. But like the people who make work enjoyable are the team members who you feel like you can collaborate with, work with very well. And in my experience, the best engineers are those who are able to point out places where they have some apprehensions and carry people along in the process. Some of the worst engineers that I've worked with are those who feel the need to make other engineers feel stupid. And that creates an environment of very little trust. And if you're going to work and spend 40 hours with somebody, you want to have a certain level of trust. And I realized that actually the best engineers are not those who are highly disagreeable. They're actually those who you feel like you can build consensus with, and you can build a level of trust that allows you to execute on team projects. So those are some of the characteristics I've learned from the exceptional engineers that I have been blessed to work with. Of all the things I know about my tech career is that I have been fortunate enough to meet amazing people, people who inspire me to do better work, people who make me feel good, and people who I want to show up more for. And I hope these tips help somebody in their own journey trying to become an engineer. I've also talked about my experience interviewing at Facebook, and that video will be linked below. And if you have any other tips that you think some of the best engineers have, comment below. If you like all this, like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all next time. Thank you.